Test drive, see your Cadillac dealer in the South.
Overnight in 1961, to fence in the East German people is tonight a useless hulk, a monument to the Cold War.
This is a CBS News special report. Through the Wall. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Connie Chung.
Good evening. It's been the most amazing day yet in Eastern Europe's political revolution, and tonight may be the most amazing night ever in the city of Berlin. People are dancing on top of the Berlin Wall. Earlier today, the communist leaders of East Germany suddenly gave up their generation-old policy of locking in their people. They threw open the borders to the west, including the wall, and said citizens will be allowed to come and go freely. The communist leaders also held out the promise of free elections, coupling that with a desperate plea to the people to stay on. Tonight, both Germanys received the breakthrough with joy. Alan Pizzi is on the scene in Berlin.
They were streaming across the wall within hours of the announcement. East Berliners were supposed to have visas to do this, but they just came, and the border guards let them through. Berlin tonight is a city in a state of near delirium. West Berliners turned out in their thousands to greet their countrymen from the east who flocked across the now open Berlin Wall. Car horns, whistles, cheers, the joyful chaos of an event many dreamed but few believed would ever happen. Families met, some of them after years of separation. Many of the East Germans said they had only come for the night, to have a look and then go back. That's what the East German authorities were gambling on when they announced tonight that citizens who wanted to go west could go directly instead of through another Eastern Bloc country. People apparently leaving for good were taking that route at the rate of up to 350 an hour since last Friday. The authorities apparently believe that opening the borders tonight will convince disgruntled citizens that promises of reform are serious. But that wasn't the issue here tonight. The wall is still there, physically, but tonight it disappeared, buried under the joyous spirit of a city and people reunited after 28 years. As one young man from the East put it, it may be only a moment in my life, but it's a wonderful moment. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, in neither East nor West, but at least for tonight, only Berlin.
By the way, East German radio said tonight that starting tomorrow morning, police will no longer allow people to just walk past the wall checkpoints. They'll have to have exit visas. Under the new reforms, visas are supposed to be available to anyone. President Bush said today's developments are a step toward his own policy goal of a Europe whole and free. But he also noted that the exodus has put a big strain on West Germany, and tonight he ordered U.S. military forces in West Germany to offer emergency housing and other aid to East German refugees. Earlier tonight, Dan Rather got the administration outlook from Secretary of State James Baker.
Mr. Secretary, in 1956, when the Hungarians fled their country and the communist apparatus there, we opened our doors to them. Should we do that now with the East Germans? And if so, then how quickly will we do it?
Well, we should open our doors. The freedom-loving people of West Germany are opening their doors to these people. Most of these people want to go to West Germany, though. They are Germans, and they speak German, and they have relatives in West Germany. They want to live in Germany. So should we open our doors as well? Yes, we should, to the extent that we can accommodate them. If there's some that would want to come to the United States, we should welcome them.
What is the chance of a crackdown now in East Germany or inside the Soviet Union itself, that so much is happening so quickly? What are the chances somebody will say, listen, it's too much too fast, we've got to crack down, a la China?
Well, we hope that doesn't happen, of course, and we've made the point over and over that we're not seeking unilateral advantage as a result of these rather remarkable changes that are taking place. Instability in the Soviet Union or instability, bloodshed and violence, things like that in Eastern Europe or the Soviet Union are not in the interest of the West now. What we want to see is the kind of thing we're seeing today, where we see reform taking place, but taking place under peaceful conditions, and it's that we should continue to try and support and try and advocate.
Granted, but respectfully and gently, the question was whether you expect a crackdown.
Well, we don't know. Nobody really knows. It's our view now, and nobody can be certain of any of these things, but it's our view that the Soviet Union will not crack down in terms of the use of force. That doesn't mean that you're not going to see as things develop in Eastern Europe from time to time in different countries, you're not going to see perhaps some backsliding. That's entirely possible. We hope that doesn't happen. But in terms of Russian tanks rolling through the streets as they did in Hungary in the example you used back in 1956, we don't anticipate that.
Secretary of State James Baker, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Our chief White House correspondent Leslie Stahl is with us now live. Leslie, President Bush was very low-key at his news conference today. Why?
Well, it's his policy, as explained to me late tonight, that he doesn't want to arouse any passion or be any cause for a backlash. I think he's very concerned that he not give the Soviets any reason to say that these internal disruptions are being caused by the outside, by inducements or incitements by the United States of America. So he's tiptoeing. And his national security advisor gave a little news conference tonight at the state dinner for Mrs. Aquino here at the White House. And let me tell you what he said. He said, we're not rubbing our hands. But we are pleased, but we don't want to encourage a crackdown. This is in the back of their mind all the time, that if the President of the United States says something, they might be able to use it as an excuse. Scowcroft was asked if when President Bush sees Mr. Gorbachev in the Mediterranean meeting, they don't like us to call it a summit, if he's going to thank him, and Scowcroft said, we will congratulate him on his wisdom and his enlightened leadership, I assume, for allowing this to go forward.
Leslie, is the Bush administration concerned that events are occurring much too quickly?
Well, I think there is concern, although they're not saying they're concerned. But today in his news conference, the president even suggested that the East Germans might want to stay in East Germany. I think there's concern that too many people are leaving too quickly and the strain may be too great on West Germany.
All right. Leslie Stahl, thank you for being with us. Alan Pizzi is live in Berlin now. Alan, can you hear me?
Yes, Connie, I can hear you. It's a fantastic night here. They're still, as you said earlier, dancing on the wall. At Checkpoint Charlie, which I left a little while ago, the police were beginning to move the West Germans back. A lot of West Germans crowded up to Checkpoint Charlie, and East Germans were coming through there. That's a checkpoint they're not supposed to come through, but they were. There are still little East German Trabants rolling around the streets, getting cheered wherever they go, sprayed with champagne. It's like nothing I've ever seen before in my life. It's quite the most extraordinary scene, quite the most extraordinary place.
Alan, are people in Berlin talking about reunification?
Oh, they've talked about reunification for a long time. I think right now there's just a heady rush of celebration. Proper reunification, I think, is some way down the road. It's just too difficult to talk about reunifying two different social systems, one country in the Warsaw Pact, one country in the NATO Pact. And reunification per se, one Germany, I think, is not really the issue. The issue is how do they put the two countries together so they exist with their separate systems, but still as Germans free to travel to either side. I think that's what they mean by reunification. I think tonight brings them certainly a large step closer, if it lasts.
All right. Thank you very much. Alan Pizzi reporting for us in Berlin. We'll be back with more reaction in just a moment, including a live interview from Washington with Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell. Helmut Kohl is in Poland beginning a scheduled 6-day visit, but sources tonight said he will probably interrupt the trip and go home for at least one day to deal with the East German developments. Joining us now from our Washington studio is the Majority Leader of the U.S. Senate, Senator George Mitchell of Maine. Thank you for being with us tonight, Senator.
My pleasure,
Senator, should the U.S. be encouraging a united Germany?
Well, that has been United States policy for nearly 40 years now and will, of course, continue to be. I think the question really is under what circumstances and at what pace.
Well, aren't there dangers to the Western alliance at such a prospect?
Well, it can only be solved, the German problem, in the context of a European solution. And the significance of the 1992 economic union of the Western European nations is that, in part, its motive is to firmly anchor West Germany, and through it all of Germany ultimately, as part of the NATO alliance and the Western bloc of nations.
Senator, do you expect free elections, and if so, how soon?
Well, the East German leader, Krenz, today called for free elections, and I think in order to sustain this, no timetable, but I think they're going to have to move very fast. Remember, the policy they announced today is a complete reversal of a policy that was adhered to as recently as 48 hours ago. So I think anything is possible there, and I think they're going to have to maintain a very rapid pace of reform in order to hold people in their country.
Are there any dangers very quickly of things running out of control?
Well, certainly that's always a danger, but the reality is that the desire for freedom and economic opportunity is universal. It exists in every part of the globe, and the East Germans are responding to it as the Chinese have, as the Soviets have, as the Hungarians and Poles have, and I think this tide is irreversible.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator George Mitchell, for being with us tonight.
Thank
We'll
you.
be back in a moment with a last look at the Berlin Wall.
This is my husband, Paul. He's under a lot of pressure. But now he's taking charge of his health, eating right by cutting down on cholesterol and saturated fat. That's why I cook with Puritan, with no cholesterol and proven 94% saturated fat-free. Better than any other kind of oil.
You might call sneakers before dinner?
Hey, Mr. Principal, carry your books?
Anytime.
Paul's feeling great, and I am too.
Puritan, make it your oil for life.
These are oats. Something you've been hearing quite a lot about lately. But, well, some cereals turn oats into processed oat flour. New Oat Bake from Kellogg's uses only whole oats. Then we simply bake them with nuts, raisins, and spices for the first cereal that combines the goodness of whole oats with the goodness of baked taste. New Kellogg's Oat Bake, the whole oat cereal with the crunchy baked taste.
My mother gave me this table when I got married. And every week I dusted it with Pledge. Then I gave it to my daughter.
When I got married, and every week I dust it with Pledge.
For 30 years, it's had a beautiful shine, week after week.
Year after year, with no buildup. End dust just evaporates, leaving wood looking as dry and unprotected as before. But a Pledge shine protects beautifully. And when my daughter gets married...
Yeah, never.
With Pledge, dusting can be beautiful.
Gladys spends several minutes each day talking to her plants.
Aren't we looking nice this morning?
Well, thank you. She thinks it's had amazing results.
I don't know when I've seen you looking so healthy and strong.
Thank you very much. If it helps her plants, think what it could do for her marriage.
Just tell them you love them today. How about some water, honey?
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
And finally, today was the beginning of the end of what they call the Wall of Shame. The wall. It was built in one day. Then it stood in the way of East German citizens for 28 years, locking them in, caged by cement and communism. Over the years, thousands tried to flee. Some made it. Some did not. The wall. It was always a symbol of repression, and a symbol of failure. Failure of a government to win support of its people. The blocks and mortar are still there, but today, the wall has become a monument. A monument to the abiding dream of people.
Pleasure. Tiananmen Square. The democracy movement is not yet dead. It may be on the run, but it is not yet dead. And then what has been going on in the communist world on both sides of this wall. Climax, what has happened here tonight. The wall effectively has come down. And I mean physically as well. That's a chunk of the Berlin Wall. Men and women atop the wall tonight, hammer and chisel, taking it down, symbolically. Because realistically, it has been taken down by the people in the last 8 hours or so. They are crossing this wall each way.
Last year, 6 million people bought a refrigerator 1 year too soon. Introducing the new refrigerator from Maytag. Buy one now, and if it stops working before the year 2000, we'll buy it back. See your Maytag dealer for details. See a Maytag repairman in our commercials. The new refrigerator from Maytag. the dependability people.
All right, guys, cowabunga!
Cowabunga. And what an actor. A dramatic, heart-tugging triple feature like this one makes me hungry for another one. Sonic's triple feature. You know, if they gave an Academy Award for burger combinations, Sonic's triple feature would win it. A double meat, double cheeseburger, crisp Sonic fries, and a medium Coke. So catch the triple feature. It's playing at a Sonic drive-in near you.
Mr. Avalon, may I have your autograph? It's for my mom.
The 1990 Cadillac DeVille features a 180 horsepower V8, while the new Lincoln Continental comes equipped with a much smaller 140 horsepower V6. That's one reason Cadillac outsells Lincoln 2-to-1 in the Southeast, and why some say Lincoln's horsepower reminds them of another animal. For a test drive, see your Cadillac dealer of the South.
Something's happening here on your TV with the Husky Boys, the famous family on the Cosby Show. Yeah, the folks you know. There's a full house here where daughters, dad, and uncles draw you near. Yeah, don't disappear.
Join us right here on TV6.
A friend of the family.
900 criminals let out of Florida's prisons every week just to make room for the new ones. They call it legalized escape. Watch 2020 Friday.
It's Good Morning America live from Bermuda. Tomorrow, exploring the mysteries beneath the sea.
And joining us back home, Farrah Fawcett, here on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Vitaly Kobish is a columnist for the Soviet government newspaper Izvestia and host of the Soviet television program International Panorama. He joins us now live from Moscow. Interpret some of your government's actions for us a little bit, Vitaly, would you? When Gennady Gerasimov said earlier today, we don't mind, you know, a multi-party government in East Germany as long as East Germany stays within the Warsaw Pact. What does that mean?
It means that the German Democratic Republic is a sovereign state, and they are doing their job, and it is their job. And if they want to live with a multi-party system, it's their business, and we welcome it.
But is it their business if they want to reunify with West Germany? Can they do that?
To unite?
Yes.
Ted, tell me, would you like the Germany be united? But frankly.
I'll tell you what, when I come on your program, I'll answer your questions. Now you're on my program.
Okay.
You answer mine, all right? How does the Soviet Union
I am
feel about
answering your question, asking you. It's a very special question. Some people are talking too much about the unification of Germany, but they are afraid of it. One French statement says that 2 Germany is all right, 3 would be better. And at least in West Europe, everybody are terrified even thinking about the united Germany. As to me, I am not. And I think one day it will be united, but today the conditions probably are not so good for that. And it's a problem of a future. And today, if they want to be united, it's all right. But I'm not sure that even in West Germany, the leadership and the people is prepared for that.
Yeah, I think you may have been talking about Francois Mauriac, who also said, I love Germany so much, I'd like there to be 2 of them.
Yes, and not only 2 of them, but to be in peace and in cooperation, and it will be the best way for the unification. The same is happening in other places. I just came from the Far East. I've been in South Korea and other places, Japan, China, North Korea, and so on. They have the same problem of unification of Korea. But it's not the point of today's agenda but it's of tomorrow's and day after tomorrow, probably.
Vitaly, show me a little of that new Soviet journalism. Do you know what it was that Gorbachev said to the new German leader when he went to Egon Krenz when he came to visit your president in Moscow a few weeks ago? What did he say to him?
He didn't tell me anything about that. I mean, Mr. Gorbachev, but as an analyst who worked with him for some years in the Central Committee, I can imagine how it was. He was mostly informing the German democratic leadership about what is happening in the Soviet Union. Many people didn't have exact information. They thought that it's something terrible is happening, everything is being destroyed and so on. And he explained that we are just making perestroika. We want to live in the state of law. We want to give the higher standard of living to our people. We want to make socialism with a human face.
And having heard that explanation, old Krenz went back to East Berlin and East Germany and said, that's it, we're giving up, right?
I think he deeply impressed by his explanation the leadership of German Democratic Republic. And as soon as the changes there were inevitable and it was ripe already, the country for the changes, it played, it was effective.
Vitaly Kobesh, this is an outrageous time of the morning in Moscow to get you up, and it was very kind of you to come and join us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
When we come back, we'll look at how East Germany became, in essence, a prison camp for so many of its citizens. And we'll talk with Walt Rostow, a former national security aide to John F. Kennedy at the time that the Berlin Wall was built.
After you've produced the yearly report in record time, after you've made order out of paperwork chaos, after you've turned the slideshow into a colorful part of your winning proposal, and seen productivity become top priority, maybe after all that, you'll know why Canon is the most popular copier in America. From personal to color laser copying, the choice is Canon. Call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
This has to do with the fit and the finish of things, small details. A simple elegance that is both warm and friendly. Every detail is crafted to work together, to create a feeling, a spirit, a tranquility. The Q45 luxury sedan and the M30 sports coupe from Infiniti.
Let me show you everything I know about electricity. On, off. You want to know any more? Ask Ace. That's what I do. Hey, let me tell you, Ace is a place for me.
Gee, sounds awful, Bob.
It's no day at the beach, Steve. Sore throat, cough.
Try one of these.
Sugar-free Nice showers your throat with medicine for icy, cool relief.
Oh, cool. Feels better. Guess it's back to work for me. Yeah.
Put your throat on ice with Nice.
You know what comfort is? Comfort is something familiar. A person says, I feel comfortable here. He means things are as he expects them to be, as he remembers them. Familiar patterns, natural materials, pleasant aromas, colors, sounds. These are all elements of comfort, as they are all elements of the Q45 luxury sedan from Infiniti.
No part of Germany was a very pleasant place to be in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War. Still, it wasn't very long before the differences between life in the communist East and the democratic West became simply overwhelming. Nightline's James Walker takes us back.
Now, at last, after all the ghastly years of toil, blood, tears, and sweat, the climax of total German defeat is reached with the death of Berlin.
After the destruction of Berlin and the end of World War II, it was agreed between the victorious powers that the German capital should be divided into zones for the purpose of occupation by Britain, America, France, and Russia.
Indeed, the Allies divided the entire German nation into 4 sectors. Uli Heinemann Rufer was a 20-year-old ex-German soldier when he returned in 1945 to his home in Berlin, the city once the largest in Europe.
The buildings had disappeared. There were ruins all over the place. The subway didn't work. Nothing worked. And we had no automobiles. And we had those Allies hanging around who partly helped us to survive, you know, by presenting food and things like that.
In the eastern sector of Germany, there was economic stagnation and famine. No Marshall Plan as the U.S. had mounted to help the western sector rebuild. The U.S. and its allies sent truck convoys and trains filled with food and fuel into Berlin, located inside East Germany. But in 1948, when the Western Allies set the stage for a federal German government, the Soviets responded by cutting off access to the city. The U.S. answered with the Berlin Airlift, a desperate attempt to keep the city alive.
For 20 months, from April 1948 to September 1949, more than 2 million tons of supplies were airlifted into West Berlin.
All those kids ran out to Tempelhof, and everybody was very happy, and we were not scared anymore. We thought, really, we were afraid we would starve to death or freeze to death.
As the economic division between the two Germanys grew worse, the exodus of East Germans crossing to the west began to grow until in the summer of 1961, when some 2,000 people crossed each day. A total of 4 million people fled between 1945 and August 13, 1961, the day when the East Germans and the Russians horrified the world by erecting the Berlin Wall.
Thousands of tons of vitally needed coal and food supplies are stalled by the Russian blockade of Berlin. The Cold War between East and West is on.
The phrase Iron Curtain became a physical reality.
Even the policemen, Eastern police was shocked. Eastern Army was shocked. Those poor boys didn't know what they should think of this. And of course, lots of tears, you know, lots of tears. This is the end of our wonderful city.
Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev said of the wall, "The West will stand there like dumb sheep." West Berlin Mayor Willy Brandt pleaded with American, British, and French generals who governed Berlin to do something. They did nothing. But if America could not act, it could speak. An American president visiting the wall in 1963 to demonstrate unity with the German people.
I take pride in the word, Ich bin ein Berliner.
The wall became more than just a symbol of Cold War antagonism. It extracted a terrible human toll, separating families and friends and school chums. Many Germans, though, refused to live inside their wall prison. In the early 1960s, escaping was as simple as crossing the street. But then the East German government turned the barbed wire into concrete, added floodlights, dogs, and a so-called death strip where guards had orders to shoot to kill. And still the refugees kept coming, if not across the wall, then around it, crossing rivers before East German patrol boats could arrive. The wall became a symbol of the desperate lengths many East Germans would go to for freedom. During the 1970s and 1980s, it became to Germans a part of their landscape, visited by tourists and American presidents.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
But if the wall kept people in, it could not keep out the TV shows from West Germany that carried hourly messages demonstrating economic progress and success. The common language forged an unbreakable bond.
People are people. You cannot divide them by a wall. Impossible. No border, no fence can keep people from coming together.
Consider what the separation has meant to 80-year-old Max Gohler. He lives in the West German town of Mödlerud. What he has endured is nearly enough to break your heart. The sight of his 85-year-old brother Kurt, only 100 yards away, yet separated by the wall which divides their village. It sure would be nice if we could be together again. I'm all alone in the West, and he's over there. 28 years of forced separation. Maybe, just maybe, it's over. I'm James Walker for Nightline.
Walt Rostow was one of President John F. Kennedy's most influential advisors at the time the Berlin Wall was built. He was then a White House national security aide. Just after World War II, he was involved in the reconstruction of Germany and Austria as an official in the State Department. Now a professor emeritus at the University of Texas, Professor Rostow is with us live from our affiliate, KVUE, in Austin. Do you remember that period just before the building of the wall, and did it come as a complete surprise?
No, not to President Kennedy. About 10 days before, we were walking along the colonnade with the Rose Garden on one side and the old swimming pool on the other. And quite suddenly he said, East Germany is bleeding to death. That means that the Warsaw Pact is endangered, and Khrushchev can't stand that. He'll have to do something, perhaps a wall. And then he went on to say, and I won't be able to do anything. I can barely hold NATO together in defense of Berlin, but NATO is not prepared to go to war to destroy the empire in Eastern Europe. And when it happened, I can assure you, at least in my memory, that there was no one in Europe, in Germany or elsewhere, who was prepared to go to risk war to knock down the wall. What we did do was to send some American forces up the highway to Berlin and sent the Vice President, Mr. Johnson, up there to speak. But it was a shocking event, and Khrushchev believed that in the face of the wall, that Berlin, West Berlin, would, in his phrase, drop from the tree like a ripe apple. I worked on a program to keep Berlin viable in the face of the wall, and I must say that it's a great satisfaction these days to see that the people in Berlin, with the help of people in West Germany, have survived this difficult
Before I permit you to indulge in some certainly justifiable enthusiasm over what's happened now, let's stay back there a little bit. You know, there are revisionist historians who say that if only the Allies had presented Khrushchev with a united front, with a few tanks that had moved toward the wall and knocked it down, there wouldn't have been a damn thing he could have done about it.
Well, we thought of that, of course, but you know, all you'd have to do is to move the wall of the barricades a bit further back. But I assure you that no German politician that I know of, and we were in touch with them all, let alone the people in France or Britain, would have backed us if we did that. But revisionists are important, and I want to encourage them to go on, especially if they can build their position on new evidence. But that's the way it was at the time, and I think probably that's the way it'll look in history.
Now, a little justifiable gloating on your part, not personal gloating, but represent the establishment of U.S. governments over the past 28 years. Can we with some satisfaction say that what U.S. governments have done and have represented as leaders of the Atlantic Alliance has made this day possible?
I think we've played an honorable role in this long, sustained period, and I would immediately add, and I'd like to say something about it, we have a lot more to do. But in the end, what made our policy reasonable was the faith that within people was, in the end, a great hunger for freedom, that whatever mistakes we might have made and they made, we were ultimately on the side of what human beings wanted. And to see the crowds out in Germany now, when only a few weeks ago people were telling us that, well, the Germans are different, they have a pretty good standard of life. I think it was that faith in human beings that we kept all through these years that gives us the greatest source of pride, rather than the money we put in or the soldiers we put over there.
Is there any need to sort of caution people against premature celebration? Are we perhaps taking too much for granted on this evening?
Yes, it's going to be a long process. And what I worry about is that, captivated by these pictures that move us all to tears of the young Germans up on the wall, and a succession of such moments, we may forget that we have an enormous job ahead with the Europeans, East and West, with the Russians, indeed, to remake Europe. And there are three problems, and we ought to keep them all in mind. One, of course, is self-determination for the peoples of Eastern Europe and the freedom to have their own politics and their own economic arrangements. But second, we have the job of assuring the security of Europe, of the Soviet Union, and ourselves. And that means, I think, that NATO should survive and the Warsaw Pact should survive, but they should become arms control, negotiation, and supervising bodies, because both the Soviet Union and the United States have abiding and legitimate interests in the stability of Europe.
Professor Rostow, you said you had a third point. I'm afraid I have to rush you just a little bit on that third point.